Good Friday, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of #AskRobCo. Super excited today. We've got a really amazing guest with us, Gavin Ingham. Welcome to the show, Gavin. Before I even give you the chance to say hello, just to give everyone a bit of background, Gavin has worked with numerous CEOs, leadership teams, high performers, top companies across the world, to name but a few: UBS, Microsoft, does thousands of talks and keynotes, has been a TEDx speaker, has been on all of the international news broadcasts and publications. So super excited to have Gavin with us on this Friday to share a bit of insight, a bit of what he does, some positivity, and give you out there a bit of guidance on how to make your lives, your careers better, more productive, and hopefully to achieve your wishes, dreams, goals, and ambitions. So without further ado, I'm going to go straight in. Gavin, welcome. Tell us a bit about yourself and give us a bit of intro. Tell us a bit about your journey. What got you where you are today?
Well, that's a great question. So what's got me where I am? Well, life really, moving in many directions, Rob. I was born, I'm 52, I was born 1968 in Yorkshire. Nice family, life was great, but my dad died when I was 13 in a car crash, and subsequently I really went off school after that. Failed my A-levels and looked around and went, well, what am I going to do? And really struggled to think of anything, but actually ended up as a police officer in central London at the age of 18. And I did a few years there, but it wasn't for me, and I left. And at that point then, I really didn't have a job. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I think, like many salespeople, I fell into a sales job, only to find that I was in equal parts quite good at it and really bad at it. And what happened was I started well, and then it just disappeared off the bottom, and I didn't achieve anything for nearly half a year. And I remember at the time, a friend of mine, lent me a book, and he said, read this. So I read it. And it was a book by Anthony Robbins, and I don't know if the listeners will have heard of Anthony Robbins or read any of his books, but he's the big American with the big hands and the smiley face, supremely positive. And I can't even remember what I read, but I remembered one message, and it was, you're responsible. You're responsible for your life, you're responsible for your finances, you're responsible for your relationships, for your sales, etc. And I realized that I wasn't taking any responsibility at that point in my life. In work, I was blaming the clients, I was blaming the area I've been given, I was blaming the lack of training, the management, the quality of the marketing. I was blaming anything apart from the person who was actually making the sales calls. And I think when I got that message, I turned it around quite quickly, and was pretty successful in sales, became a manager, a director, etc. But found, as I moved into a sort of sales director role, that I was enjoying coaching and training others to achieve every bit as much as I was selling and managing myself. And then I got the opportunity to move out into this industry, which is a long explanation, which I won't bother going into. But I've been doing this 20 years now, and as you quite rightly said, a combination of keynotes, consulting, and coaching, always around high performance, and that's about helping people to achieve to the best of their potential.
Amazing. We're gonna touch on more of that because it's just so much to touch on. Let's go to a few points relating to what you said. So when you weren't selling and that 6 months went past, what was the product? What were you actually?
I was in recruitment at that time. Yeah.
Recruitment, and market conditions were tough, or you didn't resonate with recruitment. It didn't. What do you think it was? Like, obviously there are the millions of excuses that you've already been through, but with that one specifically, what was the block?
So Rob, nobody's ever asked me that before. So the market was pretty good. The market was pretty buoyant, and there were people all around me succeeding. So it wasn't that. I wasn't taking responsibility. So, looking back with hindsight, I've never even asked myself the question, but I think I started and I thought, well, I'll just do this. And I don't think I thought about the amount of effort I was going to have to put into really identifying who my clients were, really focusing on improving my sales calls so that I was asking better questions and listening. Also, that whole going back to people over and over and over again and continuing to build the relationship. You know, I was very much sort of speak to somebody, they said no, I was like, okay, next. So there was just a whole bunch of things really, which just came down to me not taking responsibility. And that is a theme that I've seen through life as a coach, you know. And one of the things I often say to people is, well, it's not the complicated things that people don't do that's the problem, it's the simple things, because they think they've got it, but actually they haven't, and they don't put enough effort in. And in my opinion, most people, maybe not if you're a brain surgeon, but in most jobs, the best people are the people who are absolutely major and are masters of the little things.
I mean, I do love that. So, I mean, just from that answer, it's, you know, the perseverance and the not giving up with every candidate and every applicant, never accepting no, and always pushing for the yes. But the responsibility part, I mean, it's something that I completely share with you. And, you know, I repeat to the audience with responsibility, everything with the business that I oversee is my responsibility. Everything with all of the activities I do with charity and community work is my responsibility. Everything with my family and the people around me is my responsibility. Every single thing that goes wrong stops with me. And when you get comfortable with that, and when you get comfortable with the fact that if someone doesn't do something the way that you wanted it doing, then it's your fault because you put that person in that position, rather than blaming the world or blaming COVID or blaming Donald Trump or blaming the postman or blaming whoever. It's like, let's be a bit humble. Let's start with me and say, well, actually, what could I have done to ensure that didn't happen? Or what could I do now to make better that action? And absolutely take responsibility. And so that when things do go wrong, and you're okay with it. It's like, it's my fault. It's my problem, deal with it. Why do you think so many people have so much difficulty with that when you've so clearly communicated that that's one of the most powerful things that you learned from Tony Robbins, and it's stayed with you forever? And it, you know, it's something I say to people literally every day. Is it that people are scared of responsibility, or does the word sound so big that what is it?
Gosh, I think it's obviously, it's easier to blame other people, isn't it? It's harder to take it on the nose, you know. It's easier to say, well, it was somebody else who communicated badly with me. It wasn't me who failed to communicate properly with them. And actually, it is endemic. You're right, because you know, not all of my work, but probably 50% of my work is in the kind of the sales field, and I can count. Well, I can't, because nobody ever has. I mean, you know, sales directors, managing director, CEO, they'll ring me and they'll say, the sales team aren't making enough sales, you know, how do we persuade our clients to buy? And you're like, hang on a minute, it's the other way around. It's how do we understand our clients better, you know? And I think this taking responsibility for things, it just doesn't, I mean, it starts in school, doesn't it? You know, you leave all your homework till the last day and then you blame the dog. You know, we start doing it really early on. Don't you think it's a bit societal as well? And I don't mean that, I don't want to get into the whole societal thing, but a lot of people in society blame other people for their problems, whereas I would say that, you know, and I'll accept, you know, I'm a white, middle-aged, privileged, middle-class male. I accept all of the above. But having said that, there was a period in my life where I was doing a very good job of screwing that up. And it was me who had to take responsibility back again and do something about it. And, you know, your point about the economy was great. You know, my business, the speaking side of the business, obviously flatlined when we had the coronavirus. I mean, not just slightly, I mean, obviously zero, that side of the business. And I looked at it and went, well, that's not good. Two things. One, I saw it as an opportunity. Well, what did I want to do that I wasn't doing because I was running around on the road? That was the first thing. But the second thing I asked myself, and it's a hard one to take because obviously the coronavirus has got nothing to do with me, but I looked at it and I went, okay, then, What should I have done differently? And I went, well, I shouldn't have allowed my business to be reliant on me standing there, because, you know, I'm 52. You know, I could be ill, I could be unwell. I couldn't do that, could I? And there were many other things other than a coronavirus that could have stopped that happening, but I had chosen to ignore them. And in that moment, I could have gone, well, that's it, down tools, coronavirus, or I can go, okay, what have I not taken responsibility for, and what do I need to take responsibility for? So I think I agree with you. I think it's difficult, but I think it's important. And I actually think when you really embrace it, don't you think it's kind of liberating?
I mean, like, me personally, I love it. I mean, I absolutely love it, because then my expectations are so much better managed, because I don't feel let down by other people, and I don't feel deceived by other people, because I'm just happy to look at myself and deal with it. You know, deal with what I've got to deal with. What I would say is that, going back to your whole flatlining COVID, you know, everyone blaming the world and economy and so on, is that, you know, I've been through numerous recessions. This is my 27th year in the industry, and what I do notice is that things do always repeat. So one of my questions to you is that, if I see patterns in every time I'm putting in a moment in a position like you've just explained, it's an opportunity. I need to be positive. I need to work harder. I need to outperform. I need to do something different. I can't leave myself so vulnerable. Have you noticed those trends and patterns in you to know how to deal with them when they happen? Or is it just second nature that kicks in, and it's the adrenaline and the hunger and the desire? How does it work with you?
Well, I think for me, it was a decision originally. I certainly recognize the patterns now, but I think it was a decision. So I don't think I was, or I think I'd lost being naturally about those things. I probably, if you go back to 12 or 10, I probably was. But I think after my father died, I did start blaming everybody and everything else. And that started with my dad dying. I went, well, that's not fair. And it's not fair, but life sometimes isn't, you know. What are you going to do about it? But I you know, if I'm brutally honest with myself, and I don't often share this, but I think not initially, because after my father died at 13, obviously it was horrendous. But there came a point when, whether consciously or unconsciously, I realized, actually, you know what, I can manipulate this situation a bit. And, you know, I realized that if I didn't do things, people were going to say, oh, poor Gavin, his dad died. And I think, to an element, then I got used to actually blaming other things. So for me, there was this conscious decision after reading this Robbins book and going, OMG, this is not good. I need to take responsibility. So I kind of programmed it in, and then forced myself to do the things I wanted to do. And then after you've done it a few times, as you say, you start to see the patterns. And I think some people don't realize that. They think you're either born this positive person or this negative person. You're born somebody who can do that or somebody who can't. And I don't think anybody's born like that. I think we're all born like blank slates. Yes, your upbringing to 6, 7, 10 is going to make a huge difference, but that doesn't stop you changing it. It doesn't stop you going, you know, enough, that's past. There's the future. You know, right now we've all got the same opportunity. You know, I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and it context, which is a great thing to talk about. And she said to me, the person I feel sorriest for is my daughter in all of this. And I went, why? And she went, well, she does her A levels next year, and it's going to be so difficult because, you know, because there's going to be more people trying to get into university, and it's going to be much, much harder to get into those good deals. And I went, that's interesting. I can see that. More sorry for her than people who've died. Well, no, not people who've died. All right, more sorry for her than people who are really, really ill and are going to be on. Well, no, more sorry for her than people who've lost people. Well, no, more sorry than people who've lost their jobs and their houses and are completely destitute now. And it's like, well, no. And I'm like, right, okay. And for me, it's this kind of context thing, isn't it? We all put this thing in, we go, well, I'm this, so I have to be this. But actually, we all get to choose, don't we? And you get to choose every moment. You know, every moment you get to choose, who am I going to be from now? Because you can leave that person behind and become the other person, starting right now, can't you?
I really love that, Gavin. It really resonates with me. It's something that in so many conversations I would raise, and I'd probably go even deeper, Gavin, in the sense that what what game is happening in your head and your mind, and it is really down to you. And you're right, whether someone's positive or negative, it is really down to them and what they want to trigger in their head. And what maybe you can explain to people is that it is their decision about what they want their mind to think, whether they want it to be offensive or defensive or positive or negative. And the reality is, whether the whole world is suffering and some people dying from a pandemic or not, it's down to them how they want their outlook to be, because ultimately they're not going to change that act or action in terms of what's going on in the world, because they can't control it, but they can control their thoughts and whether they want to be positive and negative. And possibly from my side, and just learning from you from what you've just said, is one of the ways to do that is putting everything into perspective and context. And so with me, I go to a really deep and dark place. So I have my anchor and I go very deep and very dark. And let's just say it's losing a family member or death or a terminal disease, whatever, just so people can understand. And then the thing that you're worried about or you're dealing with, or the thing that's bringing you down, where does that sit in context with that dark place? And 99 times out of 100, it's never going to be there. So then it's never that bad.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think people do overcook things in the moment because we're in it. I read a book once. I can't remember who it was by, but the chap said, what's keeping you awake right now probably won't even be on your radar in a year's time. And I started thinking about all the big issues that I've ever had in my life, and they were right. The vast majority of things that were giving you a massive headache actually in a year's time are, they're over and dealt with. I think that there's a bigger problem with some people though, and I think it comes down to beliefs, because you talked about that mindset piece. And I think one of the reasons people struggle to break out of this, because it is context, but they struggle to put things in a different context or see things in a different way because of what they believe. And obviously beliefs are lies we tell ourselves that we believe are real for the most part. So we get into this situation where we say, well, I can't play football with my child because I'm 52 and I've got a bit of a heart issue, right? Which is sort of nonsense, right? Or you can say, I'm 52, therefore it's natural that I would have put on a bit of weight. Well, therefore that stops you going out and losing that weight again, or and I mean, you can see how this extrapolates out into, I didn't come from I came from a council estate, nobody expected anything of me, and therefore I can't possibly be. Well, hang on a minute, stop. You are where you are right now. You choose where you want to go. Here's a different belief. We're all in one of the best countries in the world at one of the best times in the world, even with coronavirus. We've all got free education, we've all got opportunity, and you can go out and start. Yes, you might not get into Oxbridge. Yes, you might not be able to walk into one of the top companies, but you can go out and work your way up. So many of the business directors I know who are doing amazingly well never even went to university, had very poor education, but at some point they decided, enough, I want to do something with this, and off they went. And we can all make that decision. When something happens to you, you can extrapolate that out and form a belief. Everybody's nasty to me because I've got grey hair. Everybody's nasty to me because I'm a middle-aged male. Everybody's nasty because I'm a girl, I'm black, I'm whatever. And yet the reality is that may be true, but the belief is what kills you. The belief is what nails it, because that's what stops you doing anything about it. I can't do anything about it because I'm old. And at that point, it's all over. So you've got to kick that belief out to be able to get the different context, and then set your mind on, well, actually asking a different question. What can I do? What do I need to do? How do I move this forward, etc.?
Is it really like just making excuses and then with that excuse not doing something? So it's like, I can't do this because of X. and then you've already made a decision that you're not going to do it, so you don't do it?
Some of it is, and some of it's deeper. So some of it is literally the belief that you can't because, but some of it will be excuses. Yeah, it could be either. Until you work with somebody, you're not going to know. But either will stop people in their tracks. I think the problem with the belief one is that if you don't shift the belief, then you've got an issue. And if you look, we talked about societal pressure, and if you look at society for the greater part reinforces a lot of these beliefs. You know, how empowering is that? I mean, I've got two girls, right? And I'm not saying there isn't sexism, casual sexism, societal sexism. I'm not saying there is or there isn't, right? But I've got two girls, and I don't want them to go out into the world believing that there is societal sexism and therefore they can't do X, because that does not serve them in any way. I want them to be able to go, I want them to go out with exactly the same belief set as my boy. I can do anything I want. And when somebody comes up to them with something different, I want them to go, that's interesting. What do I learn from that? Time to move on. You know, how would I avoid that next time? How would I deal with that? But not to take that one experience and drive it down into a global belief that affects every area of their lives. You know, and that's just one example, but that's what I personally want for my girls. I don't want them to listen and decide, well, I can't because that's a nightmare, you know? I mean, somebody once said to me, I said, and they said, oh, well, you know, Gavin, when it comes down to it, this person didn't have a degree. And he says, you know, Gavin, when it comes down to it, you can't really achieve anything in life without a degree. And I looked at him and I said, well, I wish somebody told me that. Because I don't have a degree, and so do so many people are successful in so many areas. You know, yeah, you probably can't be a solicitor without a degree. Yeah, you probably can't be, well, you can't be a doctor without a degree. But there are lots and lots of things you can do. But if you hold that negative belief, then it's going to hold you back forever, isn't it?
Absolutely. Loads of questions here. Let's get a few down. And what message would you give to those frightened of taking responsibility?
What is it costing you not to take responsibility, and what would you gain if you did?
Okay, thank you for that. Next question, I'm going to run through them quite quickly. Do you think taking too much responsibility could leave you overwhelmed? And has this ever happened to you?
Gosh, we'd have to define too much responsibility, wouldn't you, to answer that question? Probably not, because I think if you take any less than 100% responsibility, then you might as well take none. Because if you give yourself the slightest wiggly room, then it's going to be in that 1% that wasn't your issue, isn't it? So I think you kind of have to take full responsibility, because I don't think you'll get that feeling of it's mine and I'm in charge. You know, there is something nice, actually, and this is probably a reframe, but there is something nice about taking responsibility, doing your best and failing. Yeah. I mean, you'd rather succeed, but at least you failed and you know you gave your all, right? That comes down to a belief I got from my mum, because my mum always used to say, I don't mind what result you get. What I mind is that you give your best. It doesn't matter whether you win or you lose, give your best. So my win is giving my best. As for overwhelm, well, that's about process, that's about structure, that's about breaking it down into steps and tasks and processes that make sense. Overwhelm's probably not related in the same way, I would say.
I mean, it's like the basic question for everything. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, really is, what's the worst that can happen? You do something so bad and so wrong, you lose your job, and you'll get another job, and probably a better one. I mean, it's always like, what's the worst that can happen? And whereas people already think of the worst and don't do it because they're already thinking of something bad that might happen if they did do it, where it's much better to live with the repercussions of the good of doing it and the bad of doing it and not doing it well. Like, whatever happens, you're winning. You're never winning by doing nothing. Never.
No.
Next question. How do I become a high performance person?
We need a bit more specificity around that one. So for me, high performance is about setting high targets, setting high goals, knowing what you want, working out what the behaviors are, and then delivering your best. I think that the simplest way to start is I talk about being a 10. And what I'm talking about is doing things from the absolute best attitude or mindset that you can. So, you know, if you're spending time with your children or with your wife or with your partner or with whatever, with a friend or with your mother, you are 100% focused in that moment, 100% present in that moment. If you're giving a speech, you've thought about what is the mindset you want to deliver here and giving it your absolute best. If you're making a sales call, the same, you know, or even if you're relaxing, you know, what does that mindset of that relax out of 10 the best you can be. So for me, the simplest way in is to do this. It's when you wake up in the morning, at some point early in the morning, maybe in the shower, ask yourself, how can I be a 10 today? And then imagine 2 or 3 critical situations that day and what a 10 would look like, and then go out and try and deliver on that. If you want to add another little bit at night, just say to yourself, how did I do against that? How did I perform against that? And if you perform badly, that's all right. Ask yourself another question. So what do I learn from that so I can be a 10 tomorrow? And then repeat and rinse, repeat and rinse. We have these little bands that I give to seminars, and that's what they say. They just say, I am 10. And then they say, how can I be a 10 today? And lots of people say, irrespective of the maybe hours and hours and hours of coaching they've had with me, that one question, because it just focuses their mind on being the best, is the most powerful thing they can do. So if you want to start at high performance, that's what I'd think about.
Love that. Last question, and I'm going to get some final thoughts from you, Gavin. How to influence other people being more responsible? Is it a skill that can be passed on to others?
So other people taking responsibility? Yes, it is. But it's a combination of things, isn't it? So if you're a leader or a parent or something like that, the first thing I think you have to be is a pure role model of that. So people have to see you taking responsibility. And I think if you think of a lot of leaders, whether it's government, and I'm not looking at the current government or the past government or the government before, I'm just going government, or leaders or council leaders or a lot of business owners, I think when you look at them, you'd say, well, they don't take responsibility. You know, back in the old day, they'd fall on the sword and go, my department, my fault. Now, not so much, is it? It's like it was the sales director's fault. And the sales director passes it down to the sales manager, and you know, and oftentimes the people who end up falling on their swords are the people right at the bottom. So I think as a leader or as a parent, or the first thing you do is take responsibility for yourself. I think the second then, which is much more complicated and requires more time than we've got, but comes down to what I'm going to loosely call coaching, which is helping people understand what they truly want, what they truly want to achieve, the impact that their behaviors are having, and the kind of behaviors that they need to take to achieve what they want. But that's not something we can clearly talk about right now. But it comes down to being a 10 yourself, walking the talk yourself, and then being 100% present with them, non-judgmental, helping them to rethink their lives. Because I think at that point, people often talk about changing others. But changing others is actually outside of your control. The only person who can change somebody else is themselves. And
Absolutely.
you can lead a path, you can guide a path, you can ask questions, but actually you've then got to kind of help their thinking through it. You can't just go be responsible, because clearly we've all been told that all of our lives, right?
Absolutely. I mean, listen, you can be responsible for your own actions. It's very difficult to be responsible for someone else's actions. Very difficult. Gavin, love your vibe and positivity. This isn't from me, but I do as well. What are your thoughts on remaining true to yourself?
I'm not quite sure. If whoever asked that question wants to elaborate, that would be great. I'm not quite sure where they're going with that one. But if we're talking about values, which I guess we are, I'd say it's absolutely critical. Even working up at CEO level, I believe most people, and you'll have different words for it, but most people are driven by 3 or 4 things: health and fitness, which could be one or the other, or a combination or something different, loved ones, family relationships, business, career, money, and which aren't necessarily all there, and sometimes it's in the other one, but sometimes a significant other. And I think you need to know exactly what you want to achieve and where you want to be in all of those things, because I think those getting out of alignment are the worst thing you can do. So for example, if I had £1 for every time somebody has said this to me, I'd probably have about £350. But CEOs, you'll have the conversation, go, what is the most important thing to you? And they will say, oh, my daughter. And you'll say, okay, and what would you do to demonstrate for your daughter that, that relationship, etc.? And they say, okay, well, maybe I'd go and watch her play football on a Thursday. And I'll say, great, how many times do you get to watch them play football? And they'll go, well, I've never seen them play football. And you're like, hang on a minute, you just said that family was your top priority, the most important thing to you in the world. You said that the main thing you could do was be at football, but you've never been at football. So what was it you were doing that was more important than the most important thing that you were supposed to be doing? And they go, oh, yeah. And I think that's what I would see as being true to yourself. And I think it's absolutely critical at that point. And funnily enough, I think a lot of people right now use being true to yourself as an excuse to be a bit of a prat, and to mouth off and to have ridiculous opinions. I don't think that is being true to yourself. I think that's just using the excuse to be a not very nice person. But being true to yourself for me is about values, and I think it's critical.
Just to close out today, I'm going to give you the last word, Gavin. What are you doing at the moment? Tell us a bit about your book. Where can people find you? How can people engage with you? And to finalize all of that, what impact, what positive message do you want to share with everyone to go away with for the weekend?
Fabulous. So since the pandemic, I've been very much focused on getting the IM10 message out there to as many people as possible, in initially helping people to rebuild, re-engage, redrive their businesses and their lives. And now very much, I'm looking to form a community, or I'm running a community of people who are positive, moving forward. There's many places you could go for that. You could go to im10.com, where you'll find various things, but probably the two best places are either link with me on LinkedIn if you're on LinkedIn, or indeed go to the Facebook group, which is just IM10. So if you search IAM10, you'll find the Facebook group, and there's hundreds of people in there all sharing positivity, and anything else I'm doing, you will be able to get from there and find out about. Final message. I believe there are three core things that make people high performers. The first one is conviction, and that, as somebody said, that's about living your values. It's about watching those beliefs, and it's about being that 10. The second one is about clarity. So that's about knowing what you want, and having a path to achieving it. So asking yourself, what are the core things to do every day? And the final one is consistency. And I think it's consistency where most people fall down. I think a lot of people have conviction. They have that belief. A lot of people have clarity. They know what to do, but fewer people deliver consistently. Fewer people turn up day in, day out and do the things that they need to do. So my final message would be that actually consistency is probably the standout key of high performance. And if you want to be a high performer in any area, whether it's a good parent, or whether it's fit and healthy, or whether it's to pass your exams, or whether it's to get promoted in work, or whether it's to make that sale, or be a great leader, or whatever, or build that business, whatever it is, work out what you need to be doing consistently and do what you need to do to make sure that that turns up consistently day after day after day. And guess what? One day you'll turn around and find out that you are a high performer.
Amazing. Love that, Gavin. I actually do love your vibe. I do love your positivity. So I do agree with the earlier question. Thank you so much for your time, your input, your knowledge, the wisdom, your advice. I'm convinced that everyone's going to go home this weekend, take on board what you've said, and change something in their lives in a good way, to hopefully allow them to achieve whatever they want to achieve, their wishes, their goals, their dreams, their aspirations, or to be happy and all or one. Thank you everyone for listening. Hashtag AskRobCo every Friday, 1 o'clock. You can find us, me, Gavin, on all the platforms. Stay connected, reach out to us, share the message, share the word, stay happy, stay positive, stay healthy, stay well. Good weather is on the way, so enjoy it. The end of summer is happening over the next week. Get some sun, and we'll catch you all again soon. Take care. Thanks, Gavin.